Welcome to Above the Gallery, a podcast focused on conversations with professional creatives. Join us as we casually explore the intersections of wisdom, creativity, and innovation. On this episode of ATG, we welcome fine artist and educator Tim Rees. Today on Above the Gallery, we welcome Tim Rees. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. You just recently moved back into Scottsdale or the area. How's it going in this heat?
I actually like the heat. I came from the Midwest, so this is great. But I left Arizona to go to the Midwest.
Right.
And so I don't really miss the cold as much. I like being warm.
And so when it gets October and it's 75 degrees, 85 degrees, your move is going to make sense.
Well, I'll actually be pulling out sweaters at that point, I think.
Because you have thin blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So you're a fine artist. I bought one of your paintings, and we'll refer to it in this podcast. Obviously, I'm biased, but I love your work.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your background in painting. And I know you're a pretty complex, and you're all over the place as far as business ventures and all that good stuff. But let's talk about painting first. Why painting? How did you start? And where are you today?
Well, if we start back at the very beginning, I fell victim to what many younger people fell victim to, which was growing up being told that I could not have a career in painting or as an artist unless I was wanting to teach elementary school or high school. So I didn't for a long time. And when I was 24-ish, I picked up a magazine where I saw that there were artists out there who were making paintings and making a living at making paintings. And I thought to myself, if they can do it, I should be able to do it as well. And so I immediately signed up for a workshop at the Scottsdale Artist School, local school here. Took a 3-day workshop and then never went back to school again.
Who was the artist that you took?
Jeremy Lipking.
There you go.
Yeah. I was at the time enrolled in some art classes at the community college. I told the teacher I wasn't going to come back. I'd learned enough in the 3 days that I should be able to figure the rest out. And I just started painting in my spare time. I was at the time working 2 jobs, one full-time job at a hospital in Scottsdale and a part-time job at a hospital in Phoenix.
Wow.
And then I had a couple hours of waking moments left over, and then I commit that to painting.
Wow.
I did that for a few months, at which point I thought my paintings looked good enough to hang into a gallery. And so I went to a gallery in downtown Phoenix, showed the owner my work, and she agreed to show it. So she started selling paintings there, and that was my first taste of the gallery world.
Who was it?
It was called Blink Gallery. They were part of the first and third Friday, so they were only open twice a month. I started painting with some professional artists in an open studio sort of situation, actually above a gallery back then, in the summer of, say, 2009. And they told me, well, I painted my first portrait from life. And the artists all gathered around, and they looked at it, and they said, wow, this is actually pretty good. And one of them said, you should go to the Palette and Chisel in Chicago and paint models there. And I said, oh, what's the Palette and Chisel? And they said, oh, that's where Richard Schmid went. And I said, oh, who's Richard Schmid? And they all sort of gasped at me, right? Yeah. And then they pull out this book by Richard Schmid called All a Prima, Everything I Know About Painting. And I flip through a few pages of this book, and I say, wow, somebody wrote a book on how to paint. How come nobody ever showed me this before?
Yeah.
And that was enough for me. So I applied for some jobs in Chicago, and within a month, I had moved to Chicago. I was working overnight at the hospital, and then I would go down every single day to the Palette and Chisel and paint models from life.
Wow.
And that was...
No formal education?
Well, I read the book.
Well, that's
and
formal,
then I had the three-day workshop with Jeremy.
Yeah. And so you've been painting professionally for 15 years?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, okay. 10 years ago, do you remember you and I meeting for the first time at a Dorian Viejo demo?
I vaguely remember the demo. I don't remember meeting it. I'm sorry.
I just thought about this. But do you remember Linda Brandon Tracy?
Yes. Yes.
She opened up. It wasn't her home. She owned a condo where she turned that into her studio.
That's right.
And Dorian came into the gallery and did a demo for 20, 30 people. And that was the first time I ever heard of Timothy Rees. And so you've been painting professionally for 15 years. Where is your work today? Meaning not where can people see your work other than your website? Is there galleries that you're represented by? Unfortunately, I don't represent you. I only own a painting. But where are you? Are you in Scottsdale?
I do show in Scottsdale at Bonner David Gallery.
Okay.
I'll be doing a solo show with them next year, the end of 2025. So I have some time to prepare for that. I also show paintings at Arcadia Gallery in New York City.
With Steve? Mm-hmm.
With Steve, yep.
He's coming out here in Scottsdale, by the way, in March 2025.
For
Scottsdale Art Week.
Scottsdale. Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. It's always great to see Steve. I'll actually see him. I'm going out to the Far West show.
Are you really?
Yeah, and so I'll see him next week. So.
Yeah, good for you.
Other than that, I show in a gallery called Susan Powell up in Connecticut, and then Studio Pintura in Minneapolis has some of my paintings as well. So I don't regularly send them a whole lot of new work.
Well, you can't be that prolific. That's an assumption. You tell me. Are you?
Not as much as I'd like to be. I always feel like I'm not producing, and then I kind of look back at the year and realize I produced quite a bit more than I thought. But because it gets sort of scattered about so much, and I also paint for shows and different things, it feels like less of an accomplishment when I don't have a body of work at the end of the year. It's all kind of sent out right away.
And do you primarily paint from life reference?
I paint
prefer?
from life and from photo references and from sketches that I do on location. So it's usually a combination of the three, if I can. Right now I'm working on a lot of references from the past couple years that I've designed paintings for, which I'm just getting to the end of that. And so now it's time to start pulling up a new set of references. But when I'm painting things like my kids, they just rarely sit still long enough for me to get anything meaningful other than sort of color notes and gesture out of them, and then occasionally bring them back for some anatomy if I need to see their hands or something like that.
I will say this a million times. I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist. And so some of my the foundation of how artists create or their intent, usually it comes from a pretty naive place. And I actually think that's helpful in selling artwork. But it's certainly not to associating to the artists and their talents, their drive, and all that. But would you consider yourself a studio painter? I mean, you're not doing plein air.
Oh, I do plein air.
A lot?
Yeah, I do a lot of plein. I find it hard to get out of the studio now just because of what I have going on in my life. But when I first started painting, I jumped right into plein air for two reasons. One, because in that book by Richard Schmid, he said, paint everything because then you can learn how to paint instead of just learn how to paint a thing. And then secondly, I wanted to be able to travel the world. And an easy way to do that is to teach landscape painting.
Okay.
And so I had been painting for 2 years when I did my first workshop abroad, and I taught a plein air landscape painting workshop in Saint-Tropez, France.
Okay, sure.
And then after that, I did England and Canada, and I've gone to Spain to paint plein air, and I'll be going to teach a workshop in South Africa coming up in April for my 40th birthday. I'm celebrating by teaching a workshop in South Africa.
There you go. And so for artists that are either currently trying to figure out their space in the art world or they're learning, there's more ways to make a career income than just painting something, selling something. You can be an educator. You can do short-term demos. Are those lucrative? I think it's like everything else. There's a broad spectrum, right?
Absolutely.
Depending the artist.
Yeah. So when I started out, I had a couple $1,000s in my bank account, and I decided to quit my job and just be an artist. At that time, I was being represented by one gallery, and I was sending them little bits of stuff here and there, but not really enough to sustain a a career in the arts, but I thought I could do it. So I learned a variety of ways to make money within the industry. So teaching was one of them. For a while, I made panels, and I sold them to students and other artists, selling little demos, putting up my own shows, participating in other shows, sending work to the gallery. Basically any way I could come up with.
Hustling.
Hustling. And eventually those mechanisms became more sophisticated, and the profit stream from each of them grew more, and everything just scaled up more and more and more, to the point where, workshops now are fairly lucrative, and so the whole teaching aspect of it is fairly profitable, probably just as much as selling paintings.
So the chicken or the egg, do you have to be a successful painter to be an educator in that sense, for short term? Because you go into a city, they pay you a fee, people pay that institution or entity a fee to watch you paint or be taught by you for a very short period of time, right? Can anybody just go do that if they've mastered drawing? I shouldn't say that because that's too subjective. If they've been tinkering with creating something, artwork of some kind, no matter what the medium is, can just anybody go to these short-term, like Scottsdale Artist School? You've got to have some weight to your work in order for these entities to say, yes, please come here, we'll pay you X, and then they make revenue by students' tuitions, whatever it is.
Right. Well, it comes down to whether or not you already have a name established or not. So when I started out, I had no name established. And in fact, I had been a quote-unquote professional artist, or at least trying to be a professional artist, for a year or less out in Chicago. And I let them know that I wanted to teach a class there, and I was kind of nobody at that point. So they gave me they agreed. They're very amicable, because this is a sort of place where, and there's lots of these places across the country, where they have a student body already, and they're looking for people to teach very basic things or fill slots that nobody wants.
But doesn't that entity need to know that you have the ability to execute what you're going to teach? So
for the most part, so you have to have some at least basic skills. But when you look at the broad potential pool of customers, students wanting to learn, you get anything from small children, parents wanting to teach their kids how to draw or paint, all the way up to really high level people who've been painting and studying for 10 years who want to get to that intense upper echelon of painting skill. So there's a huge range of customer potential. If you think you can come in after only painting for a few months and then show up in a city and then charge $2,000 a student for a workshop, you're probably going to get laughed out of town. But if you teach at a local art center where they're only charging $15 or $25 for an afternoon class, I mean, you may walk away with $150, $200, but that's where you start. And if you don't have a high level of skill and a brand already developed that's attached to your name, then that's probably where you're going to have to start teaching. And you can grow that and grow that and grow that. And then the alternative, of course, is to really become a name in the art world already, sell paintings, become famous or known because of that. And then you can start to teach workshops, and then you can actually enter the market at a higher level. But if you look at what you're able to do, what you're able to teach, and then select the appropriate venue to teach it, then there's a market for it. It becomes challenging, I've noticed, for a lot of people who become artists later in life because they come from careers where they're already making a significant amount of money. So why would they bother teaching at a lower level like that? And for that, I would say there's two things. First of all, teaching really helps you learn better. So if you want to become a better artist, try to articulate a concept to somebody.
Sure.
Once you figure out how to articulate it best, you can go on to more advanced concepts until eventually you've got a pretty solid, concrete understanding of everything you're teaching and what goes into your painting. So it'll make you a better painter faster. And then secondly, if you're wanting to incorporate teaching as a revenue stream, you do have to start somewhere, even if you're not making a ton of money at first.
That's fascinating. And do you still participate in Scottsdale Artist School?
I do, yes. So I just taught a workshop there earlier this year, which was kind of a last minute thing, but it still went really well. And I've done a couple online weekly classes with them. I actually have one starting in just a couple weeks. Those are great because I can get lots and lots of students and interact with people from all over the country.
And that's like through Zoom, and you just charge a fee in advance, and then you give them the login or something like that? Or is there an entity?
Yeah, it's essentially, the Scottsdale Artist School, they have a person who handles all of the setting up of the links. There's a sort of a board where people can post their homework assignments on, and they record what I demonstrate, and then they post it to that so people can have access and rewatch that. And then, there's an assistant with the school that kind of monitors everything to make sure it all runs smoothly. So that's great.
And Trudy's running Scottsdale Artist School now.
Yeah, Trudy is,
I hear she's doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, they're a great organization, so I really enjoy working with them. And in the past, I worked really, really extensively with them, and that's kind of how I really dug deep into art education originally. When I came back from Chicago, I sort of cut my teeth on teaching in Chicago, and then when I came to Arizona, started teaching some of those, fundamental classes at Scottsdale Artist School, and I think the students really responded to how I was able to articulate these concepts in a way that they could really connect with, and so my classes continually were more and more full, and the school noticed this, and they asked me then to design a 2-year drawing and painting program that was based off of a classical drawing, something a little more formal than just the sort of one-off classes they had, something that's long and continuous. So I spent a year researching and developing and writing the content for a whole program, which ended up being 16 courses. We had 6 drawing courses, 6 painting courses, and 4 lecture courses, covering everything from fundamental drawing and materials all the way through painting materials and techniques in portrait and figure, with lectures on materials and anatomy and composition. So there was kind of a lot baked into the whole program, and that was a 2-year program.
And they still use it?
After I left the school, it was sort of adopted a little bit and adapted to a more casual sort of format, and now it doesn't really exist at the school, so it kind of trailed off.
And did you do anything with that whole premise? Because I know you do a few other things outside of just, I shouldn't say just, but painting on canvas. You have other entities that you're involved in, like? Yes,
one of the things that I noticed when I was teaching the Scottsdale Artist School, at the Scottsdale Artist School, this program, was that we would get students visit from all over the country and sometimes from different parts of the world.
I see them on art walks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And they would walk by my studio, which at the time I had the big studio at the school with the, I think, 16-foot ceilings and the north light windows, and my paintings were all in there, and people would walk by and see the demonstrations, and they'd see me teaching. And I was starting to film the demonstrations and the lectures so that my students would be able to watch them if they couldn't attend class for whatever reason.
Right.
And so people would walk in and they would see me filming, and they'd say, "Oh, you're turning all of this into videos. Could we buy the videos?" And I said at the time, "No, these are really just for the students. If you just watch it out of context, it would make no sense to you whatsoever." And I started to get more and more inquiries about it, and people really kind of asking, being persistent about it. And so I decided, well, I'll go back and I'll refilm some of the videos, I'll restructure it. I took all of the handouts that I was giving to students in class and I structured them into textbooks, so a drawing textbook and then a painting textbook that went along with the videos. And it turned into I don't know, 100 or 200 hours of video and 2 textbooks. And I started to sell those as bundles. So kind of an at-home atelier kit where people could learn classical drawing and then classical painting, or they get the set that had basically 2 hard drives just jam-packed full of videos and textbooks, art materials and whatnot. And I started shipping those all over the world. And then I started to get more emails of people who lived in countries that were still developing, where the amount of money that they made could not come close to covering the cost of this box set that we were sending out, and they couldn't even afford to cover the production cost of it if I was willing to just give it away for free. And so my whole mindset towards this started to pivot to figure out a way to get this education into the hands of people in these other countries. And long ago, when I was younger, and I was told by my teachers in high school that nobody knew the secrets of the masters, nobody knew how to draw or paint like people of the past, nobody could create anything like that before. I had this ambition, this fleeting vision when I was younger that I was going to learn how to do it and I was going to give it back to the world. Sort of like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to people. And when people started to come to me and say, we wish we had a school, we wish we had the ability to do this, but we can't afford it, there's just no way. It reminded me of those experiences I had when I was younger. And so it became my mission to figure out how to get it into the hands of these people. And so after many years, I released a website last year. I released it, or maybe, early last year, called freearttraining.com, where I was able to take all of the videos from the program and upload them to a free website, and all of the textbooks that I wrote and deconstruct them. And so you can log on. Well, you don't even need to log on. You just go on your computer, go to the website, freearttraining.com, and click the start button, and it takes you to the introduction video. And then you can go through assignment by assignment until you've completed the entire course on drawing and painting. And people all over the world use it. And I get emails from people all over the world and Instagram messages thanking me for what I've put out there.
And when you made that transition to give it away, did the commerce of the what you had created, was that still active, or was it kind of this perfect segue into what you envisioned a long time ago? Meaning, were you still being able to sell them, right?
We were still getting some interest in purchasing them, but the art education space has transitioned and pivoted quite a bit. You know, when I started to produce these, it was very much still, kind of getting it to the tail end of the buy a DVD and watch a DVD, and started to move into, you can just watch the video online, and then it started to move into all of these, follow me on this platform or this platform, and then Patreon started popping up, and so people are resourceful and they want to learn how to draw and paint. And if, the set we were selling was a few $100s, because of what was involved in creating it and shipping it. And so if people have an option where they can try to piece something together for themselves out of all these other sources and try to combine it into an education and spend, $20 or $30, then they'll try to do that. Which, I respect that. That's essentially what I did. That's how I learned how to do it. But you are left a little bit lacking because you don't have sort of this continuous
There's not
training.
A structure to
There's
it.
not a structure, right, yeah.
But you are charging for that on a much smaller, the $20 or $30, or no?
No, we're not. I'm not now. And as sales started to taper off, I also recognized that these videos were produced 7+ years ago.
They get dated quickly.
Yeah, they get dated.
Yeah.
And immediately I was just ready to shelf everything. But then every once in a while I go back and look at a video and I'd say, there's still a lot of valuable information in here. And it wasn't horribly made. It's just old. And so it was kind of this idea of, it's not viable enough anymore to continue to sell it as a product.
Right.
And it would be a shame to just throw away the only structured video program that there is. So it was a good opportunity, a good time to put it out there on the website.
And do you have it under a 501c or?
So yeah, what originally happened was I put the website out there and realized that it needed some sort of organization to distribute it and to promote it. And at the time I was finishing a pre-law degree at university, and I was taking a nonprofit management course, and it came to me, the idea came to me that if there was a nonprofit backing it, then we could not only promote the content, but we could take that content and actually utilize it to do outreach projects in different communities across the country and world. And so I formed a 501c3 called Bridges to Art at the very end of last year.
Okay.
And the mission of that organization is to bring art programming to geographically remote or underserved locations.
And is that what this Africa trip is? Or you're doing
This is a different Africa.
Different,
yeah.
okay, see?
Yeah. So actually, one of our early projects for that, I had over the years been reached out to by a gentleman in Senegal, Africa, and about doing something for them. And when I developed the nonprofit and had everything finalized, I reached out to him again, and they had built a design studio out there and were interested in bringing an arts training program to the country for the first time. I think it was mostly because they wanted to be able to paint their clergy, which they had no European painting skills to be able to do so. And so what I did with the organization was to research how much it would cost to run something like that, the length of the program that we would implement, and all of the sort of the logistical details of getting something started there. And we sent it over to them, and then there was some turmoil within the country space, and they lost their building, and so now they're actively trying to reach out to find a new facility for us to run the program. So yeah, that's different than the workshop I'll be teaching in South Africa.
Good. Well, it sounds like you're a busy guy. It really
Yes.
does. So tell us what you paint, how you paint, why you paint. I consider you kind of a figurative painter in a naturalist sense, right? I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's from a layman's perspective. Why do you paint what you paint?
Well, I would agree with your description of my paintings, first off. One of my barriers to becoming an artist originally was that I didn't know what to paint. I never thought I was a very creative person, or creative in the way that I would just come up with ideas and want to paint them.
Sure, intent. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And so one of the reasons I resonated so much with the Richard Schmid book was, in the book, he said you could just look at something and paint it, and that could be your painting career if you want. So I thought, man, that's great. So
Yeah, in theory.
in theory,
Right.
yes, yeah. So going to the palette and chisel, there's just models every single day. I liked the idea of painting people. All my favorite paintings from history were of people and figures and whatnot. So I just wanted to be really good at painting people. All of my favorite living artists were figurative painters. And so I went in that direction. And the types of paintings I was doing at the palette and chisel were sort of vignetted portraits and figures in which I was trying to do some interesting abstraction with the surrounding elements. And that's what I started to sell in the galleries. And when I moved to Scottsdale from Chicago, I sort of carried on that idea, but made them bigger and started designing more elaborate surroundings. So I was creating dresses, designing sort of fashion with a mannequin I had purchased, and I'd go to the fabric store and buy dozens of bolts of different fabrics and create these dresses after looking at fashion from the 1800s and sort of like Alphonse Mucha sort of paintings. And I would do these very large figurative paintings with these abstract color splashes made from the fabrics. And that was really engaging for a while. But I wanted to introduce more narrative into my work. And it came right at a time when my wife and I started to have kids, and so it became a sort of natural desire. I don't know why at the time, but I thought it would be really great to, in a very classical, or I'd say maybe French academic naturalist way, to paint these scenes of my wife and my children, where they became suggestive of a narrative, and I could play around with ideas of color and paint application and push towards developing my skill and my design abilities more and more in painting. And so that became the direction of my work for quite some time.
Are you still there in that space?
I am, but I've started to question what I'm wanting to dig into more with the idea of the paintings. So beyond just being pleasing visually or cinematically engaging, I want to know what kind of emotion the paintings are evoking. So now, I've been painting my kids more this year in some sort of narrative paintings, but they all kind of tie into this idea of them internalizing or contemplating what's going on, or the growing pains of growing up, and how I relate to that and how the viewer might relate to that. And so I feel like they may have taken on a little bit of a somber turn for sure, but it's a little more of a human turn, and I'm interested in trying to tap into that human connection.
That's so. Most people don't know the kind of year you've had. It's been a hard year from an outside looking in, and I'm not sure many people are courageous enough to actually not only get into just reflecting on how difficult the year has been, but also as a professional painter, going through the painstaking exercise of creating something that is illustrating the year. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah, I think everybody handles change and difficulty in different ways. And for me, this was a good opportunity to add something to my art that wasn't quite there before.
Is it therapeutic for you?
I don't actually think it is. And I think that would be an atypical answer for a lot of artists. And I feel like the majority of artists that I know are painting things because of the therapeutic aspect, or that, drive, that how it makes them feel, or, they're dealing with things. For me, it might be therapeutic in the way that I can reflect on things. But I looked at it more as a way to confront my humanity and try to bring other people into that humanity, and try to engage with other people. And so, for example, this year I created a painting of me putting a coat around my 3-year-old daughter as we're getting ready in the morning. And this was right after sort of a traumatic divorce, and we're kind of picking up some of the pieces of that, and I was able to get an expression on her face that's very reflective of what it feels like at that age to go through that, because I went through that when I was that age, and I know it's an experience that a lot of people have had. And this painting I submitted to the Portrait Society of America this year for their international competition, and it actually won first place. And I went to the conference, and I had grown men come up to me crying.
I bet.
Because of the painting and how it connected with them. And it told me that I was on the right track with my paintings. I mean, it's great to do a painting that's visually pleasing and ties back into our history of art, and maybe advances some aesthetic ideas, but to also connect to people on such a dramatic way with a painting. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do with art. We're not just making pictures to hang on the wall. New art, avant-garde art, any sort of art is created to solicit an emotion out of the viewer. And prior, especially in the early part of my career, the only emotion I was really interested in pulling out of people was having them look at something and kind of sigh and say, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. And I do like that. I still want that. But I also want them to look at my paintings and be connected to humanity through the paintings.
Does it frustrate you when somebody like myself is a little too black and white about artwork? Because I look at everything in the art world in a very different lens. And I will always be the first one to say, I don't come at selling artwork. And it's, if you were to give me your work, for instance, the painting that I bought from you, I adore it for personal reasons. I think artwork is all about associations, what we pull from, either subject matter, technique, palette, whatever. I'm a dad of girls, and that painting is, it sings to me. But for you and, the Portrait Society accomplishment or accolade, not confirming, but giving you applause for the painting itself, that's got to be bittersweet. Because I would assume that you want to automatically step back into that space, which most people want to run away from, right? And so I don't know how the internal conflict of creating, having the intent to create, is to always address that difficult emotion, conveying that onto a canvas for the viewer. Sometimes that can create gray hair or uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or space, and you just kind of dive into it.
Well, yeah.
For now.
I will confront it. Yeah. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that all paintings I do need to be that somber.
But you're not scared of it, and you actually embrace it.
Yeah. And then at the same time, I will say, too, that I do quite a few paintings that start to hit the very abstract aspect, figurative work with abstraction, because that satisfies my intellectual curiosity for creating and paint application and all these other different ideas that are separate from the connecting with humanity idea. I love design, and I love creating spaces with furniture and with paintings and with accents of things. And so creating this different set of paintings, which I do have on my website. It's separated in a different spot from the traditional work, and it's all these figures with abstracts all around them, and big fields of color. And I really enjoy doing that. And so I don't know where I'll land in the end, because I'm kind of known for both, really, in different circles.
Are you?
Which is always kind of interesting to see that. But you start to realize that there's a lot of pockets of artists and pockets of art viewers in the world as well. And, it would probably make more business sense for me to double down on one subject and become, the name in that subject, right?
I talk about this all the time.
But I think I have a little bit of ADD. And so I could knock out a painting of one subject, and then I immediately get bored with that, and I want to go back, and then it sort of just oscillates back and forth. So I do kind of separate where I send the work, though. This more poignant French naturalist, somber sort of stuff typically drifts off to Arcadia in New York City. And then in Scottsdale here, it's design and color and figures and abstraction and playing around with new ideas. And
they both occupy the same amount of space inside between your ears right now? Or is one kind of taking more of well, you're here, so I don't know if that's fair to even ask. You're in Scottsdale now.
Well, I'm moving back towards the Scottsdale paintings because I just finished 4 or 5 of the other type and sent those off. Gotcha. And so now my brain is burning through sketchbooks trying to figure out designs that I want to do, working with models.
Do you have favorite living artists that are in either of the spaces? I don't know if that's fair to ask, but I ask everybody.
Oh, I have a huge list of favorite artists.
The top, not the top few.
So I would say, well, Jeremy has always been a top for me. Shane Wolf, actually, who you show here, him and I actually became fairly good friends, and I love his work, and he was actually one of the reasons years and years and years ago where I started to do these large-scale figurative paintings. So 7 feet is the largest I've done. I think he's probably done much, much bigger than that.
Yes. Yeah.
But I remember seeing his work in a
We had
magazine.
to stretch a canvas of his inside the gallery once because it
Really?
wouldn't fit. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Keep in mind this is an old building, but
Yeah.
he likes scale. And
Yes, he does.
he's in Missouri now.
Missouri, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he lived back when I was in Iowa, where I
in
just moved
Paris.
from. He was 4 or 5 hours from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we got our kids together a bit, and
Okay,
he
so
came
recently.
to me, and
I was going to say, he just came into the States from Paris
right,
a year and a half ago, tops. Yeah.
yeah,
Cesar Santos.
yes, yeah, he was definitely doing that for a while.
He's in Italy now, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. No,
I think so.
okay.
I might
That's
be
interesting.
wrong.
I know Casey Ba has just started to do some really interesting
Mhm.
things in that sort of space as well.
Yeah, we could talk about artists all day long. Do you have big plans moving forward as far as subjects or technique styles, other than just the commerce of the art world? Is there something that you're looking forward to, not attempting, but really to do something for you versus all of the other peripheral things like galleries and shows and teaching? If you were to cut out space to paint something just for Timothy, what do you think you would do? That's such a loaded question.
Well,
but it's a fun
no,
one.
I don't think it's entirely loaded, because I did about a month ago pull out a giant canvas and I just did a big abstract painting.
Did you?
Yeah. And
No figure?
No figure. I was at the time thinking, I think I want to put a figure on this. And then I spent one day later on painting a figure, and I said, nope, don't like it, wiped it out. And so now I have the abstract painting in my apartment,
Wow.
hang on one of my big walls. And it's, I think, 3 feet by 4 feet, and it has gold leafing, and it's sort of the color blue of this room as well. And it was enjoyable to create. I really like how it looks.
Do you?
And yeah, I would be happy to move into a space or art market kind of selling that sort of stuff. But then I think of, it only takes me an hour or two to do that, and it's huge. I could probably fill up my apartment in 3 days, overflowing with paintings like this, which, I mean, that would be fine. But got a lot of other things in my apartment and kids running around.
Yeah, right. We have conversations about subject matters in here a lot, and over the years I've had a lot of contemporary figurative artists, and I've always thought, right or wrong, that the human form is the most difficult thing to paint, and not only just to paint, but to make people react emotionally to the figure, right? And a figurative painting, you can't just stumble upon a good painting. There is a whole lot that has to happen first.
Yes.
Where in abstraction, you can stumble upon a good painting. You might not be able to replicate it down the road, but you could stumble upon a good abstraction. But you certainly cannot, in my opinion, a figurative painting.
That's true, yeah. And I will say that that's been a large part of my draw to figurative painting.
Yeah.
Because I'm the type of person who, and I took a personality test once, and it told me this. I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I'm the type of person who, if somebody tells me, oh, that's going to be really hard, most people probably can't do it, then my brain immediately goes to, well, then I'm just going to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the challenge that goes into it, and also the scarcity of people who can do it really well.
Right.
Draws me to it.
There is not very many people. This is not my space, but I have a little foot in that space, and we travel quite a bit. There's not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists that paint the human form that are just jaw-dropping emotional experiences. There's just not, to me. There are thousands of abstract artists. And I actually love abstract. I have a few in my home. But for me, I initially thought I was going to university to be an architect. That didn't really work out. Education was fine, but the architecture didn't. And so I think of artwork as it relates sometimes to architecture. And today's trends are big scale, large minimalistic spaces, and abstractions do very, very well. I have, and I think I've said this 3 times in the last month, I have a daydream where in these big abstract minimalistic homes that are selling for 10, 15 million, of taking things like these tronies and framing them more contemporary or modern, and actually the juxtaposition of the very academic art world and the very contemporary architectural world, it actually works really well up here. The market doesn't think so, right? And I always find that's, I'm not spending any energy exploring that. We're too busy at the moment. But I've always thought that was a fascinating area to really explore. But I think, I don't know who told me this, there's a but for every seat. So, there really is. I can't tell you over the last 25 years, I fall in love with artwork all the time. That's why I still do what I do. I love selling, but more importantly, experiencing artists and their work. I just do. I find so much value, and it's nourishing for me. And I love the fact that we're finding collectors, and it becomes nourishing for them, right? I don't consider myself an educator. Rarely do I take that stance with a collector. The painting and the artist are doing all the heavy lifting. I'm just removing any obstacles for the collector or buyer, because they are different, to acquiring the artwork, right? From my perspective. But the abstraction as it relates to contemporary, figurative, realism, whatever, the human form, I've always argued on behalf of the human form and the artist painting it, because I think that is something that 99% of the population on the planet cannot even fathom how to execute it properly. Right?
That is true.
It's subjective, but that's what I think.
I will say, as far as my experience leading up to abstract versus realism and figurative work, when I was younger, and I liked all the old paintings of the past, I briefly dated a student who was in school to become a PA, and we started having conversations about art, because people would find out that, I like art. And she told me her favorite painter was Rothko. And at the time, I have to tell you, I couldn't fathom somebody liking Rothko. Because, of course, the natural response is, well, I mean, this wall is basically a Rothko. You could just paint the wall, and then it's just a big field of color.
Yep.
So I didn't understand it at all. And I asked her, why do you like this? And she said, well, I spend all day thinking and studying. And at the end of the day, to sit in front of a Rothko and just get lost in the field of color is a moving experience. And I started to realize over time that people in general will respect figurative and portrait work if it's well done, but they can connect with abstract work more because the subject has been removed. And so they can experience it as pure color, pure form, or pure, everything just stripped down to design. And you can like it or not like it, but because you've removed the subject, you now have a broader pool of people who could be interested in. And I found that idea to be very, very fascinating. And so in my newer work that I'm starting to now explore for my show next year, is trying to find that marriage where I can bring the figurative work that everybody respects and does like. It's built into us to like people because we're people, right? But to marriage that with abstraction in such a way where people can view a figurative painting almost the same way they view an abstract painting, and can reach it on that same level, and it can exist inside of a modern space like that.
So from here, moving forward, you just came back into Scottsdale since June. You have 3 lovely children. I think I've only met a daughter that you brought to the
Oh, that's
the,
right.
the
Yes,
Igor
my
show.
middle one. She's about to have a birthday in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And she'll be
She'll be 6.
6.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 12. You have a show coming in December at Bonner David. You're at Arcadia.
I did just sign on to Portraits Inc. to be one of their artists. So I'll be starting to take on portrait commissions
Okay.
through them. I'm attending their annual salon conference in October in Chicago. So do a little meet and greet with the other artists and the people at that organization. So if anybody's interested in a portrait commission,
Okay.
that's a great way to reach out through them to get a hold of me, and they can handle all the timelines and details, and it's fantastic.
And your website.
It's not up on my website yet. Actually, I have an assistant right now who is building me a new website. It should have the same domain and everything on that, but the new website will be a lot more user-friendly, easy to navigate, and get all the information and links to my workshops coming up. I'm starting a Patreon, so I'll have some teaching opportunities through there, and then and of course it'll feed over to my free art training website, which actually currently does right now. So if you go to my website, there's a small video that
Tell
shows.
us what your website is.
If you go to my website, www.reesfineart.com,
Okay.
It has a small video promo in the top corner showing the video content from freearttraining.com and linking over to that or showing you how to get to that. So that's definitely worth a visit. So that's all coming up fairly soon. And then I've got some other projects going on right now. I have a business partner and I are designing some art carriers that are better suited for artists in the industry who need to transport materials to, plein air painting or classes, things like that. So that will be launching hopefully within the next 6 months. And then I'm working on a sort of marketplace to connect people wanting to learn art with professionals like myself to make it easier, more accessible. So wherever you are in the country, if you need feedback on something, we can get it to you. So that's something I'm building right now that I'm really, really excited about. So stay tuned for details on that.
Oh, that's perfect. It was a pleasure, Timothy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you for joining us on ATG. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe on our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok channels.